there were well over 1 million people living in the Caribbean. Local community leaders were subject to powerful regional leaders like Wakanagari, who controlled trade with large personal fleets and warehouses of commodities. Into this world, Columbus returned in November 1493 with a military flotilla of 17 ships. Under his command were armor-clad soldiers, mounted cavalry, attack dogs, and guns. The Spanish conquest of the Caribbean began. Gold mines were opened, and the Taino were enslaved, forced to mine the ore. A Spanish priest, Bartolomé de las Casas, who accompanied Columbus on his second voyage, spoke out against the cruel treatment of the Taino people.
It is not possible to recount the 100th part of what I have seen with my own eyes. A man had need to have a body of iron to undergo the labor they endure in getting gold out of the mines. They must delve and search 100 times over in the inner parts of the mountains till they dig them down from top to bottom. They must work the very rocks hollow. Bartolomé de las Casas.
Epidemics and famine swept the island. Yet the Spanish continued to demand that the beleaguered Taino supply them with both food and labor. Garrisons were strung across the island to fortify the gold fields. When resistance sprang up, Columbus sent out military units to terrorize towns into submission.
They were so relentlessly persecuted and pursued with their wives and children up into the hills, so tired, hungry, and harassed. And there went with them disease, death, and misery, just as if they had been killed in the wars. They died of hunger and sickness that surrounded them, and the fatigue and oppression that followed. After 1496, no more than a third remained of the multitudes that had been on the island.
Taino suffering was so severe that thousands took their own lives rather than submit.
Wherefore many went to the woods and there hung themselves, after having killed the children, saying it was far better to die than to live so miserably. Some threw themselves from the high cliffs down precipices, others jumped into the sea, and others starved themselves to death. Benzoni, soldier for Spain.
Some escaped into the mountains, including Wakanagari, the paramount chief who had befriended Columbus. He soon died, a homeless wanderer. By 1503, 11 years after Columbus's first voyage, only a few pockets of resistance remained. In the mountainous region of Sharawa, Taino people ruled by a woman named Anacaona successfully evaded Spanish demands for labor. Determined to break the resistance, the Spanish governor requested a diplomatic meeting. Anacaona agreed and summoned 80 regional sub-chiefs to her statehouse for the meeting. When the 80 leaders were gathered inside, the governor gave a signal and a thatched statehouse was set on fire. Soldiers lined up outside with swords. Taino leaders who did not burn were killed as they fled the blaze. Anacaona was spared, only to be later executed by hanging. In the aftermath of the bloody carnage, a little boy stood among the ashes and smoke beside the charred remains of his father. A boy whose name the Spanish would come to remember well: Enrique.